Good morning. Welcome to online worship at the Unitarian Society of Northampton, Florence. I'm David Mix-Barrington. I'm the tech host for today's service, assisted by Rebecca Smith. We are a congregation with a tradition of liberal faith and committed social action. We uphold the principles and purpose and values of our Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, and we strive to be a community where all are welcomed and included, without regard to age, race or background, sexual orientation, gender identity, or abilities. It is great to see everyone this morning. If you are new and would like to get on our mailing list for weekly emails of events, community support, and Zoom links, please go to our website, uunorthampton.org. After the service, we invite you to stay for social hour, where we'll put you in a small group for conversation. During the community greeting, you can turn on your video to wave hi or use the chat to greet everyone. Otherwise, we ask that you use the chat only for private messages. So when you look at the chat, if it says you're sending to everyone, please don't. You can toggle the everyone to find the participant that you want to send to. Today, we welcome Lawson Wulsin as our service leader. Lawson has been an important member of the Society for many years. He's now living on the coast of Maine, and he was recently chair of the worship committee. And we will now begin our service. Which means, whoops, back.
Oh, there you go. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Our opening words come from Sir James Frazer. The second principle of magic. Things which have once been in contact with each other continue to act on each other at a distance after the physical contact has been severed. And now join me in our chalice lighting. I'm going to do my best to light our chalice this morning from here. And if you want to light one where you are, you're welcome to do so. We light our chalice as a beacon of hope, a sign for our quest for truth and meaning. We light our chalice as a beacon of love, in celebration of the life we share together. David's now switching to Old Hundredth. We'll join in singing Old Hundredth next. David, I'm not sure your volume is working. So it's possible that you have to do the optimize for video sharing setting. And it might be related to the fact that you're muted. I'm not sure if those two things are linked.
Okay, we'll try this again.
I'm going to put the chalice behind me, which is actually below the screen. So you'll just have to have faith that the chalice is still lit. But it's there. Believe. Our first reading comes from Robert Fulghum. Met a man today, man I had seen many times before, just sitting with his legs crossed, hands knotted together, head hanging, hat down, and collar up. A daily fixture on the stone bench across from the children's fountain on the town green. Asleep, I think. But his lips are moving, very carefully moving. An ordinary, average, middle kind of man. Size, age, clothes, condition. All ordinary, average, middle. From 1 to 2 each day he sat, undisturbed by dogs, children, buses, laughter, rain, or cold. He sat, saying something to himself, maybe, daily. So I asked him, one day I had to asked him, was he all right? Which meant, what's going on, buddy? And you know what he said? He said he was praying. Praying. Not that praying is so strange, but he said he was praying the alphabet, just reciting the alphabet over and over for an hour each day, leaving it to Almighty God to arrange the letters into the proper words of a proper prayer. What was missing in words, he said, he made up for in fervor. He figured God could handle it and would understand. Well, I don't know. I think maybe I would settle for a little less praying and a little more sanity myself. And at the same time, I wish I believed in something, had faith in something that much. Please join us for our first hymn, or second if you count Old Hundredth, which is sort of in that liminal space. Enter, rejoice, and come in. And David, as you switch, the last time you sort of navigated around your screen, we lost the lyrics for a second, which was okay because it was Old Hundredth. But try to leave the enter, rejoice, the video on the full screen during the hymn.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's a rejoicing coming. It's a rejoicing coming. Today will be a joyful day. It's a rejoicing coming. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. It's a rejoicing coming. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. It's a rejoicing coming. Be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. It's a rejoicing coming. It's a rejoicing coming. It's a rejoicing coming. Today will be a joyful day. It's a rejoicing coming.
Okay, so it's now time when you may turn on your video and say hello to your neighbors using the chat, and we'll read as many of your greetings as I can. I will read as many of the greetings as I can. And I do not see greetings. But if people send greetings in the chat, I will hear them. Are we okay? Good. Good morning, happy Sunday, say Teresa, Stephen and Teresa. Judy Hyde says it's a good day to sing. Joan O'Brien says greetings, everyone. Lori says great to see everyone, including Lawson and Maine. Liz and Lynn Marie say hello, Lawson and everyone. Janet Spongberg, so good to see your faces. Beth Ann says good morning, everyone. So great to see you all, Lawson, Ben, and Leah. Kate says Lawson and all of us. Joan O'Brien loves seeing Ben and Leah. Elaine says, howdy, dear ones. Thanks for your hard work here, Lawson and David and Nan. Chris Neville says, good morning, everyone. Let's see. Kathy Lilly says, good to see you all. Kitty and Nick say hello to everyone. Julie says, great to see you, Lawson. Ben, great to see all. Says it's great to see us all. Janet and Booker are quick change artists. To everyone, greetings from Allison. So nice to hear you, Lawson. And okay. Joan O'Brien likes Steve O'Day's haircut. All right. So if you can turn off your videos again, we will move on to the offering. And our offering is our way in which we contribute to the good work of the society, which includes our work among ourselves, our work with the Alton Baptist Church in Springfield, our hosting Eureka and Sanctuary. On the slides, we have some information about how you may direct your gift. There's a blue donate button on the homepage, and you can donate to Arita directly through her GoFundMe site. So although we aren't passing a physical dish for money, We are very grateful for your contributions. They'll be gratefully given and gratefully received. Thank you very much for your generosity. And I will now spotlight Ben and Leah. And you may go ahead. Thank you.
Pine cones and kindling be the crackling sound of bonfires strong. Don't let it die down. You've been ignoring the present. Besides tasting sounds, only spark that's holding me back is too well grounded. So don't let the sun go down with your anger. Don't let the sun go down with your shame. Don't let the sun go down with your pity. Don't let the sun go down with your pain. Rise up, it's a new day. We're gonna take a new pathway. The flame will keep burning if you keep on feeding the fire. So round up some friends, some actions, some branches, get out of the house. Holler up some dances, each flicker is precious, each flame brand new. On the anger, on the joy, on the time that's devouring you. And don't let the sun go down with your anger. Don't let the sun go down with your shame. Don't let the sun go down with your pity. Don't let the sun go down with your pain. Rise up, it's a new day. We're gonna take a new pathway. That flame will keep burning if you keep on feeding the fire.
Our meditation this morning comes from Billy Collins. It's an excerpt from the poem Aristotle. I'll read an excerpt and then that'll be followed by a moment of silence. And then David will start our next hymn, Spirit of Life, without an introduction. So you can just sort of, when the screen shifts and the hymn starts playing, that's how you know that it's time to start singing together again. This is Aristotle by Billy Collins. This is the middle. Things have had time to get complicated, messy, really. Nothing is simple anymore. Cities have sprouted up along rivers, teeming with people at cross purposes. A million schemes, a million wild looks. Disappointment unshoulders his knapsack here and pitches his ragged tent. This is the sticky part where the plot congeals, where the action suddenly reverses or swerves off in an outrageous direction. Here, the narrator devotes a long paragraph to why Miriam does not want Edward's child. Someone hides a letter under a pillow. Here, the aria rises to a pitch, a song of betrayal, salted with revenge. And the climbing party is stuck on a ledge, halfway up the mountain. This is the bridge, the painful modulation. This is the thick of things. So much is crowded into the middle. The guitars of Spain, piles of ripe avocados, Russian uniforms, noisy parties, lakeside kisses, arguments heard through a wall. Too much to name, too much to think about. Cobb Creek by Mary Oliver. It's morning at the creek edge, and the question is, shall I jump as usual and enjoy, as I have hundreds of times, the casual down thrust of my legs on the other side? Certain facts are unavoidable. Still, something in me refuses to abdicate. I don't spend much time on it. I jump. And for the first time in my 77 years, I fall in. What a beautiful splash.
I have seen snow that fell in May, and I have seen rain on cloudless days. Some things are always bound to change. Oh, there ain't no ash will burn. Love is a precious thing, I'm told. It burns just like West Virginia gold. But when the fire dies down, it's cold. Oh, there ain't no ash to burn. You say this life is not your life. Well, I can't be someone that I'm not. Can't stoke the fire that we ain't got. Oh, there ain't nowhere to In every life there comes a time when there are no more tears to cry. We must leave something dear behind. Oh, there ain't no ash to burn. There is one lesson I have learned. Oh, there ain't no ash to burn.
It's really good to see you guys this morning, all of you. It's an honor to show up with you this morning and worship together. I'm speaking to you this morning from my home in Maine, where I moved last September. I live on an idyllic slice of land perched between the fresh water of Seal Cove Pond and the working waterfront of Seal Cove Harbor on Mount Desert Island, often abbreviated to MDI. And I'll talk about MDI a couple of times this morning. Despite the dense, thick fog rolling in this morning, outside my window is Acadia National Park's Western Mountain. This spring, I've spent a lot of time wandering through the woods. And though it feels like I'm exploring a forest never before touched by humans, on both corners of our property, there are large piles of glass bottles and old rusty metal. These are the landfills from previous generations, and it doesn't surprise me that these piles are located right on the property edge. It's easy to picture a neighbor 50 or 100 years ago making regular trips every week, carrying garbage to the edge of their property and dumping it right over the line, where it could sit for decades without really bothering anyone. Out of sight, out of mind. I'll come back to those piles in a bit, but I wanted to provide a little professional context. I work for A Climate to Thrive, a small nonprofit committed to moving MDI towards a carbon-free future and becoming energy independent by 2030. We mitigate climate change with boots on the ground local actions that reduce carbon emissions while building economic vitality. Change is inevitable. That's the title for today's sermon. And it comes from a speech given by Anya Wright, who is a local climate activist here in Maine. Anya was speaking to the Governor's Climate Council in January. And the full quote is, "Change is absolutely inevitable. The science is crystal clear, but justice is not." And that's what I am here. That's what I hope all of you are here for, to ensure a safe, livable future for all in the state of Maine. Her call to action is one of inclusion, equity, and justice. That we must address climate change in a way that uplifts marginalized communities and unravels systems of oppression. Every week, I find myself in a conversation with a board member or a volunteer or another staff member talking about our projects and our mission and the danger of scope creep. Because as we try to move MDI towards a carbon-free future, there are inevitably invitations and opportunities to be addressing the broader impacts of climate change and environmentalism. How much time do we spend advocating for statewide policy changes? How much time do we spend outreaching to school children and educating about climate change or environmentalism or plastic waste? As the executive director, I recognize the importance of allocating our limited time and financial resources efficiently and appropriately, and keeping an eye on scope creep. But as an individual, as a Unitarian Universalist, it's impossible for me to draw edges or limits around what we're supposed to care about. It's impossible to manufacture some frame within which we operate, because when we start talking about the climate and we start talking about our environment, it goes back to our seventh principle and the interconnected web of existence. To simplify science more than a little bit, climate change is the result of industrial revolutions in which we grew our population and economies by burning fossil fuels for energy. The burning of fossil fuels puts more carbon in the atmosphere. The more carbon in the atmosphere increases global warming. Global warming is bad. That's the very simple elevator pitch. And if that's all you understand about climate change, that's totally fine. That's a good place to start. But of course, it gets more complicated. The exploitation of natural resources and oppression of races are intertwined with what we often refer to as success. Exploitation and oppression are the result of myopic privilege, of being able to draw real and artificial walls of separation and fabricating willful ignorance of our interconnectedness. That was a pretty dense paragraph. So I'm going to try with a little simpler language. I'm suggesting that climate change and white supremacy exist because those of us with privilege aren't able to see the big picture. It's a similar story to the folks who lived next door generations ago and used to dump their garbage on our property. The idea of having an edge beyond which you don't care about. So you maintain your yard and you mow the lawn and you weed out the weeds and you cut down the dead trees. And beyond that property line, that's where the garbage goes. It's the same myopic privilege that allows us to heat our home with cheap oil to drive our cars with cheap gasoline and consume a staggering amount of single-use plastic. When we buy gas, we aren't paying for the increased flooding in low-lying poor communities or the increased prevalence of Lyme disease throughout New England. When we buy a bottle of water extracted from an aquifer in an impoverished town, we aren't paying for the toxic petrochemical process of manufacturing that bottle or the unjust consequences of shipping the bottle to some of the poorest countries in the world to be, quote unquote, recycled. Economists call these externalities. And there are lots of models for how to monetize externalities. I'm not an economist, but my faith challenges me to embrace externalities, to open my arms, my heart, my mind, my ears, to welcome everyone in. That's why we sang this morning, "Enter, rejoice, and come in." Open your ears to the song, open your hearts, everyone. Don't be afraid of some change. Enter, rejoice, and come in. We need to embrace our complex interconnectedness to each other, to our planet, and to all of the overlapping systems that support life. Embracing that interconnectedness is hard. It takes faith. We need to learn to connect the antique piles of glass in my woods to the plastic waste crisis, to clean water access. We need to connect natural gas fracking and oil drilling to fertilizer and pesticide proliferation, to connect mountaintop removal, the relocation of American Indians, the moral act, and the creation of public universities, to connect slavery and racism to the conservation and preservation movement. We need to connect trade policy, immigration, colonialism, and white supremacy. We need to connect carbon dioxide in our atmosphere to poor neighborhoods across the country that, by no coincidence, happen to be down by the river. We need to connect to one another. We need to connect to ourselves. How do we build and maintain these connections when handshakes and hugs are forbidden, when smiles are hidden behind masks and sharing meals limited to only those within our pod? How do we build connection when Sunday morning worship happens on a laptop? We do so with faith. I stand before you this morning believing that this time together is bringing us closer. We believe in the interconnected web of existence of which we are a part. That's enough. That's it. That's the ball game. We don't have to understand every deal of the web. We just believe. Of course, it is still really important to learn as much as we can about the science and the history and the math of the interconnected web. I'm not trying to downplay the importance of knowledge and wisdom. It is good to learn about the extraction of natural resources from indigenous peoples and lands, the racist origins of policing, the epidemiology of the coronavirus transmission, the parts per million of CO2 in our atmosphere, and the 420 gigatons of space remaining for carbon over the next 10 years, maybe. We should all continue to learn as much information as we can. And we should accept that it will never be enough. We will never fully understand the overlapping ecosystems of interdependence. Knowledge and science and research aren't going to get us all the way there. That's okay, because we have the most powerful tool in our toolbox. We have faith. We believe in the interconnected web of existence. If knowledge is a linear experience of gathering and synthesizing data, faith is a complex mosaic of the irrational. Faith is what happens when we trust in an idea without fully understanding it, when we hope for something without knowing how to create it, when we choose to accept something as true without seeking proof. The wise man on the town green knows that it matters less that he says the right words and more, that he has fervor. He trusts that the letters he recites will be rearranged into whatever constitutes a proper prayer. Leah reminds us not to let the sun go down with our anger, shame, pity, or pain. She challenges us to rise up and take a new pathway, to keep the flame burning by feeding the flame, to round up some friends, a match and some branches, to get out of the house and holler up some dances. I find this an inspiring call to action, and when I'm feeling exhausted by the impossible challenge of mitigating climate change on a small island in Maine, it is a relief to remember the strength of our faith, the strength of our community. In our opening words, Fraser suggests that things which have once been in contact with each other continue to act on each other at a distance after the physical contact has been severed. These months, that has never been more important. Things which have once been in contact with each other continue to act on each other at a distance after the physical contact has been severed. Join me now in our final hymn, Let It Be a Dance.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let a dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words. Fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have the memories with you. Through the good and the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, we all must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. So take it as it passes by, and let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Learn to follow and to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Noise alike. Yeah, things wrong and nothing's right. So let it be a dance. Be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. Let it go again. And let it be a dance.
Rise up. It's a new day. The flame will keep burning if you feed the fire. Believe in connection, have faith in change. Together, we have more hands to reach out, more voices to sing, more ideas to branch out. From our roots will grow meaning and change.
starts with one may soon become two, just with a question. Loneliness breeds adventure into you. You set out with questions. Tired of playing it solo, would you care to join me? To walk with me, to talk with me, to play alone. 'Cause with two we'll pull through, with two we'll make do what we got. You got more hands to reach out, we've got more voices to sing, we've got more ideas to branch out from our roots. We'll grow, meet, and change. More progress and less time, and less distance between. More eyes for searching when we're feeling lost and or lonely. It starts with you. What starts with two will soon become three, just for some haunting. You recognize how you're longing to be part of something. To dream together, to laugh together, to welcome in harmony. Feel together, to hold each other, share our misery. 'Cause with three, we've got more than we had before. We'll use what we've got. We've got more hands to reach out, we've got more voices to sing, we've got more ideas to branch out from our roots. We'll go, meet, and change. More progress and less time, and less distance between. More eyes for searching when we're feeling lost and or lonely. It starts
So that concludes our service. It's now time for social hour.